Good evening, friends. Welcome to the fifth day of the workshop on real estate concepts to practice. Today we are dealing with the two sessions. The first session is income from letting out of properties as an organized activity. We have an eminent speaker, CA Vijayraja. And on the second session we will be dealing with the accounting of real estate transactions. CA Padamchand Kincha will be handling the session. For the first session, I request the speaker of the session, CA Vijayraja, to come to the dais, and also I request Chairman of the Bengaluru branch, Ravindranath, to escort the speaker to the stage. And to present a flower bouquet as a gesture of welcome. The Ruwari of this workshop, Ashok Raghavan, the workshop coordinator, is on his way. He will be joining us at any moment. So we extend warm welcome to him as well. It's my great pleasure to introduce the today's speaker. I know most of you know him and you don't need an introduction, but still it's my pleasure to introduce him, because each time I talk about him, we feel very proud about him. CA Vijayraja is a gold medalist in chartered accountancy. He secured third rank in cost accountancy. He is the first rank holder in Bachelor of Law. He is a company secretary. He is a psychologist. He has completed his MSc Psychology and is BCom graduate from Bangalore University and ranked 28th in the state. As a part of his professional experience, he has completed 17 years of his professional experience. He is a partner at Guru and Jana, a firm having more than 200 members. He is the member of Central Taxes Committee of Federal Karnataka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, presented various papers on income tax, corporate law, IFRS across India. He is a corporate trainer. He has been a trainer for the State Bank of India, Controller of State Accounts Department, Karnataka State Bureau of Public Enterprises, Indian Institute of Management. These are among other corporates. He has done a lot of publications and is a visiting faculty of many professional institutes including ICAI and ICWAI. He has authored Law, Ethics and Communications, popular publication in the professional journals, and he has coached more than 30,000 chartered accountants across India. Friends, please join me to welcome him once again with a big round of applause. One more announcement before starting the session. We will be distributing the Vibrant India Diary 2014 to all the registered delegates during tea time. Please make sure that you will be collecting your copies. So with these words, I would like to hand the session over to the speaker for the day, Vijayraja. Thank you.
First of all, a very happy afternoon to all of you. I'll try again. I wish you all a very happy afternoon, friends. Okay, we didn't provide lunch today, which meant that you had your own lunch. So was that very heavy, or? I'll try once more. Wish you all a very happy evening, friends. Oh, I changed my dialogue because from afternoon I already went to evening because you didn't respond. If you still don't respond, I'll also say happy night. And I'll end the session like that itself. Fine. The discussion, is the screen clear, or you want these lights to be off? Is it okay? No, I know generally sometimes you expect the lights to be off so that you get another chance to post lunch relaxation. But otherwise, is this okay? Yes? Okay, fine. Now, the topic that is there that we will be discussing today would be on income from letting out of properties as an organized activity. We all know the topic of house property, business profession. Then what is the confusion that is there? Now, the confusion that is there is whether it should be house property or whether it should be business profession. We'll take it up a bit later. First thing is, whenever you talk about whether it's house property or taxation, the fact remains it's about taxation. Either way, still comes under the topic of taxation. So what I would like to start off is first show my gratitude to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for giving me this opportunity to be amongst you and to share whatever I can share with you. And I also thank my office, Guru Enjana, which is my place of worship, which will help me, or rather which is helping me to ensure that I can live my dreams. I thank both of them. Now, before I start off, whenever we say taxation, we had a series of sessions going on from the last week, and we've been discussing upon various aspects. Now, whenever we talk about taxation, generally, because being in profession, you already know it from your clients also, that these are some of the popular quotes that you'll hear on taxation. The moment you say taxation, this is the first thing a client will talk about. I'm talking from the point of view of a client. This is what one of the quotes, a very popular quote is there, which says, there are two types of people who complain about paying their taxes. I don't know in your office, when you deal with your clients, who complains. But as far as I have seen, there are only two types of people who complain about paying their taxes. That is men and women. Yeah, so everybody has a complaint about paying taxes, and there is no exception for this. One more interesting quote. We always say this, India is a land of opportunities. Oh yes, India is definitely a land of opportunities. Everyone can become a taxpayer. So there is no problem at all. We say that we all should pay our taxes with a smile. I don't know how many of you have seen this hoarding. It is there near the Aikar Bhavan, which says that you should pay your taxes with a smile. I tried this, but they insisted on cash. I thought I can smile and get away with that. They said, no, you have to still pay cash. Some more quotes are there. We always say that when you earn, it is minus taxes, whereas when you buy, it is plus taxes. So when you have to earn your incomes, you minus it, but when you have to pay for something, you have to add and give extra. Who is the tax practitioner? Okay, it's talking about us now. Tax practitioner is one who solves a problem. I felt nice when I saw this quote, saying, not bad. Okay, we are the one who solved the problem. But I asked the client, do you agree with this? He added one extra statement. He said, you didn't know you had one. So until he met you, he didn't even know that he had a problem. Only after meeting you, he came to know that you have created a new problem for him. Until then, he was actually very peaceful. The most imaginative fiction being written today, it used to be the Harry Potter, but it is no more Harry Potter. It is considered as the income tax returns. And of course, the last, we always say drive carefully. This is part of the public awareness of the police. Why we should drive carefully? Because government needs taxpayers, right? So we say therefore drive carefully. And this is what we always say. If you look at this is typically what a client will always tell when he talks about taxes. He says, here is the taxman and this is your income and you earned it. It would be like this, but what are you left with? Because once you go through all these cases, what I'm going to discuss now, if you say it is house property income, officer will say, no, sorry, it is business income. You tell him, no, it's business income. No, he'll say, no, sorry, it's house property income. He'll always go by wherever the revenue is the highest. So what is the confusion? Of course, there's another one which I felt it was interesting. You see the tax, and this is the assessee being put there, and the government is asking, are you comfortable? And if you actually observe closely, he's already emptied your pockets also. And he's asking you, are you still comfortable after all this? Let's start off with the introduction on house property and business. In fact, this itself I had a question mark. Whether this is Indian scenery or this is actually a foreign scenery. Whether it was picked up from India or outside India. Whether this place is there based, of course, photographic skills are also required. Then I had a close look at it. I had to see whether this car is coming or if the car is going. And the headlights are this side, which means the car is coming. And car coming on this side cannot be in India. Probably must be outside India. Why so much discussion on one photograph? Why? Because that is how our case laws are also there. You have to go through so much of detail to understand, is it like this or is it like that? Okay, does this case come under my client's case, facts of the case? Oh, it doesn't come under my client's facts of the case, and therefore I can't apply the same analogy here. So I need to look at it in detail. What's the confusion between house property and business? What is the confusion? The confusion is something like this. Let's see what I mean by a confusion. I want you to tell me what you see. Of course, there's nothing to see now. It's going to come. What do you see? Is this a profile of a young and beautiful lady? Or do you see an old witch with a huge and ugly nose? Oh, it depends on how you want to see it. I don't know how many of you can see both of them. Of course, I can see only a beautiful young lady, but if you can see both, yeah, if you can observe here, there is a very popular one which is always said that if you can see that there is actually a young lady on one side, and this actually, if you see the other way around, it looks like an old. This is exactly what we have in our tax dispute, whether it should be this head of income or it should be the other head of income. So let's try and understand and decipher whether it should be this income or whether it should be that income. Let's see. Let me start. First of all, straightforward basic about tax, and that is the charging section 22 and 28. Of course, I'm also referring to the old law. That is your section 9 of the erstwhile Income Tax Act of 1922, which is on par with section 22 of current law. And of course, section 28 is our charging section for business profession, section 10 of the erstwhile act. Why are we referring to this? Because once we look at some of the case laws, you will find some Supreme Court judgments which has referred to section 9 and section 10. So section 9 is not the section 9 of 1961 Act. We are talking about section 9 of the 1922 Act. And therefore, I will be referring to section 9 and 10 also, which also means that it is nothing but house property section 9 and section 10 is business profession. I am just referring to the old law. What is 22? Talks about charging section for house property, which says property should consist of a building and there should be an owner, and the owner should not be using it for his own business or profession. These are three basic cardinal rules of house property which we are already aware of. You should be the owner, you should be using it for you should not be using it for your business, and of course, it should be a building. Section 28, which talks about, I'm not giving you the entire section 28, one part of it, exploit the immovable property by way of complex commercial activities. If that is there, because any activity which is incidental to business should still come under section 28 is what we have under 28. So what is the points of discussion we are going to have today? Now, this is what I'll be dealing with, and here is a summary or a snapshot of what I'll be dealing with today. Number one, I'll take up case one. The case one dealing with if letting out a property is incidental to a main business, then how do you deal with this? Case one. I'll refer to a lot of cases on this. Let me cut short here. Please understand that my presentation today is purely case law oriented presentation. That means that will help you tomorrow if there is some assessment to be taken up, if there is some issue to be taken up, what are the possible case laws that you can actually take shelter under, and therefore it's more case law driven discussion I'm going to have today. I'll also talk about case 2, and that is about rent from property held as stock in trade. So if you are holding it as a stock in trade and incidentally you also sometimes let it out and earn the rental income because the property is not yet sold. In that case, how do you deal with it? Then we'll take up leasehold properties, wherein you have taken the property on lease and then it has been now let out for earning some money out of it, whether it should be business or house property. And of course, I'll take up case 4, and that's about composite rent. Of course, we had the Shambhu Investments case, that is a Supreme Court judgment following the Calcutta High Court decision. I will take it up as and when I go there. About composite rent, nothing but a combination of rental income from house property plus amenities provided, that is facilities provided. If I am charging a rent for both of them together, then how do we deal in such situations? And the most important one, and that is the final countdown, what I'll be looking at was this part, that is commercial exploitation of property, that is letting out as an organized activity. I'm more concentrating here. I'll be referring to various case laws relating to letting out of a mall, when you're talking about all these malls, or when you're talking about of a tech park. If I am the developer of the tech park and I let out this tech park, then how do I deal under those circumstances? So I will be taking up these issues. So my entire discussion today will cover about these, and in each one of them I'll be substantiating with the respective case laws. Let's start with case 1, and that is if letting out a property is incidental to main business. Now for this, the word when you say incidental to main business, we always refer back to section 28. Now section 28, apart from various other aspects, charging section of business says, if any activity is incidental to business, it shall be considered as a business income itself. Although section 22, charging section of house property says, rental income from property should be treated as house property. 28 says, if it is incidental to business, it can come under business. So when there is a fight between 22 and 28, that is house property and business, question is who is stronger? Whether 22 is stronger or 28 is stronger as far as the tug of war is concerned. And obviously we know that in this case, when it is incidental activities, 28 is stronger than 22. Matlab, you will have a better chance of proving it to be a business income rather than a house property income. Some of the basic examples are, let me take example 1. This was a case of CIT versus Delhi Cloth and General Mills Company, 1966 case, referred to in 59 ITR, which talks about when you are letting out quarters on concessional rent. In perquisites valuation, when we do valuation of perquisites, section 17, we talk about giving properties either as RFA to the employees, that is rent-free accommodation, or it can be accommodation at concessional rent. So let us say I am providing these quarters at concessional rent to my employees, and when it's concessional rent, I am also charging a rent and collecting rent from these employees. Whether that rent what I collect from the employees in the hands of the employer, should it come under house property or should it come under business? And of course, in all these cases, if you see here, the second one, I've said it should be treated as business income. Because once you say they're all incidental, my main objective of the company is not to let out properties. It comes as one of my staff welfare perquisite CTC calculations, and therefore we say that it will be part of business and not part of house property. Similarly, one was concessional rent, other one was without any rent, it was given as rent-free accommodation. If it's given as rent-free accommodation, I'm not earning rent at all. Then why should I bother about income? I'm not earning anything, right? When it's a rent-free accommodations, and why should I bother about income? Oh, I have to bother about income. Because when you look at the house property chapter, and when you look at section 23, it talks about taxing me on a notional basis. If I don't have actual rent, then the law says that you can tax me on fair rent, municipal valuation, standard rent under the Rent Control Act. That option is there. So can the officer say, you might have got zero money from giving it as RFA to your employee, but there's a notional rent that I can charge you for, and therefore pay tax on notional rent. And therefore you got these cases, right? That is the Wazir Sultan Tobacco Limited's case of 1988, which was a AP case, that is Andhra Pradesh High Court case, which said, you can't come under house property, and therefore there's no notional taxing of revenues here. It still comes under business profession, and therefore if you're not earning anything except for the services that the employee is rendering, that should be good enough for me. Then look at this. This is letting out of a part of a business premises to a bank to carry on business more effectively and efficiently. Now the words here is important, what I've given it in bold. That is it being let out to help your business, or it is being let out wherein it's got nothing to do with your business? If you can prove that it is to carry on your business more effectively that you have let out to a bank, then I can say incidental. If you say no, simply I have let out one part of my premises, if I have just given one part of my premises, recently we have got a judgment of 2013, that is the JB Estates case, wherein it was held that simpliciter, letting out of a property with no connection with your business, cannot be treated as business income. It will come as house property income itself. So here what we should be careful is it linked with my business? If you say yes, linked with my business, then yes, it will be a business income. I've given you two case laws. One is the CIT versus National Newsprint, and the other one is CIT versus VSC Motors. In both the case laws, it was held that if you can prove that there is a nexus between earning of the income and the business I'm carrying on, you can call it as a business income. It will not come under house property. Fine. This is as far as letting out. I'll go to case 2. That is the second part of the case. That is rent from property held as stock in trade. That is a business of the company is to let out properties, simpliciter. Now here is a popular Supreme Court judgment. If you see here, this is what I mentioned here is serial number 1, page number 324 is from the book that has been given to you. So in the book, I'm just trying to give a reference of that also as and when I discuss. I'll be referring to the page number. So if you want to refer to that respective page number, the entire citation of that case is given there. All those cases have been given to you in a tabular form, wherein I've given you the difference whether it's a house property case or it's a business profession case. So I'm drawing reference from the material already provided to you. If you are carrying the material, that is. Because some of them will say, no, it's too big to carry everywhere, therefore only in the mornings I use it for my dumbbells, and later on I don't carry it anymore. If that is the case, then no. But otherwise, you can draw reference from that respective page number 324. I've given you a plethora of case law, and I'm talking about serial number 1. That is the first case law, which is East India Housing and Land Development Trust Limited versus CIT. Supreme Court judgment. Interesting judgment. Of course, if you see, they talked about Section 9. And I've already told you what is Section 9. Section 9 was from the erstwhile Income Tax Act, which is nothing but today's house property. So they said it will be held as house property income. Now what was this? Let me tell you the facts as to what happened in this particular case. The company, so you see here, this is an East India Housing and Land Development Trust. Obviously they were into construction and development of lands and housing. But they also, what they did was, some of the lands were constructed into buildings and it was not sold but kept for renting it out purposes only. The question was whether this can be considered as incidental to business. Argument was it was held as stock in trade. My intention is I want to sell all these properties, but since I could not sell these properties, I have decided to give it on rent. And therefore can I say stock in trade anyway is part of business. Any transfer of stock in trade will also be a business. If you also refer to 2(47), which defines transfer in relation to a capital asset, there we said that it can't be a capital transaction because it's a business asset when you're talking about transfer of a stock in trade. So going by that analogy, can you say that if you use stock in trade and you earn something from stock in trade, it should be business income and not house property? Normally yes. If your stock in trade is earning some revenue, obviously it should be business normally. But this is not normal, this is abnormal. Why abnormal? Because we have got a separate provision of house property, and house property chapter very clearly says if you let out any property, I don't care for what it was, you let out any property and earn any rental income out of that property, it has to be house property only. Because of the interpretation of statutes which says expressio unis est exclusio alterius. Any express provision of one thing excludes the general provision if it is given. So you can't put it under the general provision saying that it is incidental. You'll have to go by the specific law, and specific section 22, that is the erstwhile section 9, says it has to come under house property itself. And if you see, this is what the Supreme Court said. I'll be referring to this case again. Therefore, this is important for us to understand this case. That is, the character of that income is not altered because it is received by a company formed with the object of developing and setting up. Just because in my memorandum of association, MOA, what we prepare, we all know that MOA is supposed to be the most important document in understanding the constitution of a company. In the MOA, I put my objects clause, and one of my objects is to let out property. So the question is, if my objects is to let out property, that only is my business. That's my business is to let out properties. Can I call that as my business income? That was the argument here. And of course, we had this case, it said, just because you put it as your objects, that way as an individual also I can say, I have one property and that one property I'll give it on rent. You have got 100 properties and you give 100 properties on rent. How does it matter whether it is one property or 100 properties? Where do I draw the line? Just because I've got 100 properties and I'm letting out all 100 properties on rent, can I say that's my business? I will say I have one property and that one property also I'm letting it out on rent. The difference is your 100 properties are all 10 by 10 shops. My one property is Bangalore Palace. And therefore, for all you know, my revenue may be greater than what your revenue is. So I will say my full-time job is to let out one property only. And every day morning, 10 o'clock, I'll go near that property. If some kage gube is sitting there, I'll say whoosh whoosh and go. And stay there up till 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'll say I've taken care of this property on a daily basis. It doesn't make a difference to me whether you say I have one property or 100 properties. If your job is to let out a property, even you call it as a business, I'll still call it as house property, because I don't know how to come out of section 22. There is no way I can come out of section 22, which is for house property. So I will still say it is house property only. If you have any queries, as and when I discuss, don't ask. Or if you still want to ask, you ask. Most welcome, because at least that way it will ensure that you are awake. So if you want to ask a doubt, please ask. Any point of time, you can just raise your hands. I will stop. You can ask me a question. Most welcome to ask me any question. But there is no guarantee that I will answer it. Right? Because I have got one great liberty today. And what is the greatest liberty I have today? Or rather, the greatest strength I have today? The greatest strength I have today is my session is followed by my teacher's session. Right? That is Padamchan Kincha sir. Right? I was a student 18 years back. So when I was a student, 94, 95 when I was a student, so therefore my teacher will come, although it is now quite some time. So I can always now say, if you can ask me a doubt, I will decide whether to answer or not to answer. If I don't answer anyway, backup option is already there for me, right? So it will be answered. So I have a great advantage. Normally when I take sessions, I don't create confusions. I am not one person who creates a confusion. Normally if you attend seminars, this is what I always felt. When I attend any seminar now, I will come with a clear mind. I will go back confused.
Because until then I never had that confusion. But because somebody will come and tell, it can be looked like this also. It can be looked like that also. Then they created a confusion. I never thought that way. So that there can be a confusion. So in fact I always go back more confused. So I always used to ensure that in my sessions I don't create any confusion. Very clearly tell you this is what it says and this is what it should be dealt with. So cause and effect is clearly discussed. But in today's session I can take that liberty. I can confuse. At least once I should get that liberty to confuse. Because to clarify, my teacher will come later. Okay. So I can take a liberty. But I'll still not confuse you. Don't worry. So here is East India Company's case, which talked about the fact that character of the income will not change just because you're holding it as stock or just because in your objects class you have mentioned it saying that it's your business. Continuing with the same, just like your East India case, we had one more, that is SG Mercantile Corporation's case. This was in 1972. The previous one, if you just go back to the previous one, if you see that this was a 1961 case. Obviously, the 1961 case was not before the Income Tax Act of 1961, but we had the Abstain Act of 1922. And then only after this case only we got the other cases which followed, saying that the case is good enough. And again Supreme Court came out with an SG Mercantile Corporation, reiterating what they told under the 1922 Act. Just that the same law will apply in 1961 Act also. Now you'll be wondering, what is this point numbers? Suddenly 5, then 13. In school we thought that is the only thing we know correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4. But how come suddenly the numbering has become 5, 13? This is not jigsaw puzzle. This is again based on the material what I have given you in hand. Right? If you look at your book, I am talking about serial number 5 and I am talking about serial number 13. So that will give you a cross reference of what I am discussing here. So let me go to 13. The assessee had included the rental receipts from letting out a property under head business and profession. This was the 2004 Madras High Court judgment. That is the Chennai Properties and Investments case. Your accounting methodology will not decide taxation. Is the ultimate crux of the story.
Just because in accountancy you have recorded it as a business receipt does not make it compulsory for me to treat it as business. And just because in this case they held it as a rent receipts to be part of business, Income Tax Office does not deal with that. They said, however you treat it makes no difference to me. I'll have to still treat it as house property because what you're still doing is letting out of property itself. Again you had one more case law of 2008. Again the Madras High Court itself, which is the Kairam Hotels Limited, wherein income earned by way of leasing properties, no commercial activity was carried on. I will be discussing about hotels in detail as and when I go across. But here we need to understand a slight difference. Here when I am talking about hotels, it is not that the assessee was running the hotel. He only had the premises and it was just given away on lease. And therefore they said, you are not doing any activity of maintaining this hotel, therefore I can't call it as business. It has to be house property income only. If you see this, all these were held to be house property incomes. And here I am talking about the fact that no commercial activity carried on. So the court said, are you doing any commercial activity? No, you constructed one hotel and you just let it out. It is like me constructing one garage or a showroom and giving it to a Maruti Udyog dealer or a Toyota dealer. Now does it mean, or a Hyundai dealer, does it mean that I have done business? No, I have not done business. Although I have constructed the property according to your choice. That doesn't make it as a business activity for me. So here also they only had a hotel, but they didn't do any commercial activity. So therefore we said it's only business. It's not business income, it has to be house property income. This is based on the 23 serial number. This was 2010, much more recent decision of the Kerala High Court of Joseph George and Company versus ITO. Much more recent judgment, 328 ITR 161. Now this was the judgment of 2010. It is interesting again. Assessee was engaged in letting out rooms in lodging. Assessee also had a building given on rent to a bank. Now I am going back to the previous discussion what I had. If you remember, I told you that if you are also having a bank which you have let out, and if the letting out of the bank was incidental to your business, it can come under business profession. Whereas now I am contradicting the answer, where I am saying it will be a house property income. Why? Let us see that again. Assessee was engaged in letting out rooms in lodging. Assessee also had a building given on rent to a bank. Lodging is business, but letting out a property to bank has to be treated as income from house property. In the facts of this case, the assessee could not prove that the bank was let out to help his lodging business. So there was no nexus. There was no nexus between business receipts and the letting out of house property. Because there was no nexus, we said then in that case I cannot call it as incidental to business. Letting out a building to a bank was purely different from actual lodging activities, and therefore lodging activities will come under business, but giving it to a bank will not come under business, it has to be under house property. This is against what I told you before. There it was incidental, therefore yes, here it is not incidental, therefore the court said I cannot take the advantage of that. Then we had the Haryana Tourism Corporation's case, 2010. This is interesting again. Commercial properties with no takers were given on rent. What happened in this Haryana Tourism Corporation's case was, Haryana Tourism kept on acquiring lot of properties across everywhere for the sake of promoting its tourism, and they found that some of the properties what it had, it could not actually commercially exploit or sell it, and therefore it just held those assets. This was the catch point for Punjab and Haryana High Court to decide. Commercial properties with no takers were given on rent. So what do we mean by this? I had it in my stock in trade, but there were no takers for this, and since there were no takers, I decided to get something out of these properties instead of keeping it as a dead investment, and that what I got was all house property income only is what was the ultimate decision. So they said, this was again a 2010 recent decision of Punjab and Haryana, wherein they said, what are you doing with this? Is there a commercial activity? No. Just because it is stock in trade will not give you the advantage of calling it as business and profession. Yeah.
How the income is to be assessed. Correct? No? That is whether you hold it as fixed asset or stock and trade, the income from the house property must be assessed under section 22. So take the case of 56(1)(2), where let out of the plant and machinery should be assessed under income from other sources. What happens if I am a furniture dealer or otherwise a shaman contractor, like a person who is letting out the furniture? In that case, even though my nature of business is to let out the furniture, obviously under section 56(1)(2), I must offer under income from other sources only, not under income from business. I am not allowed to claim any such expenditure as income from that is business expenses. Did you get my point?
Let me see
and
what.
Same analogy as 56(1)(2).
Correct. You are talking about basically letting out of
machinery, furniture.
Machinery, furniture.
Yeah,
but how is that linked with house property discussion now?
That is same analogy I am drawing the conclusion. Same analogy. See,
what you are trying to say? Yeah, go ahead.
If your nature of ownership, it doesn't make any difference for the purpose of assessment under the head, whether it is a house property or a business income. On the same analogy, if I am the furniture rental agency, I let out the furniture under 56(1)(2), I must offer under income from other sources only, not as income from business, and I cannot claim any expenditure other than depreciation and the furniture.
Okay, I will answer this question this way. What you are trying to say is, just for the benefit of everybody else, you have got 56, which is the charging section for other sources, which says that if it is letting out of plant and machinery, furniture, etc., it comes under other sources. Just because I want to call it as business, I may still not be coming under business under section 28. So I still have to go under 56. Similarly, you're talking about between 28 and 22.
22, yes.
What I would like to tell you here is there is a slight difference here. What is the big difference between 22-28 as compared to 28-56? What can be the big difference? Oh, there's a very big difference. In 22, what happens is because of 24 bracket A, which talks about the standard deduction of 30%, what I'm allowed, and 24 bracket B, which is interest on housing loan. But for this, I don't get any other deduction at all when it comes to 22. Whereas when you come to 28, you've got the entire provisions of claiming expenses. Now let us link 28 with 56. 56 has got 57. That is your admissible expenses. Wherein 57 is more or less close to
business.
Your 30-37 provisions. So very similar to your 30-37 provisions, you've got your 57 provisions, and therefore the distinction between 22-28 is not same as 28 and 57. Wherein the courts have said that when it comes to 56, you've got at least the advantage of 57, which is more or less close to what you have got under sections 30-37. Whereas in this case, between 22 and 28, I hope you are with me what I'm talking about. Yeah, when you're talking about 22 and 28, I don't get that advantage of all those sections 30-37 benefits, because it only says 24 bracket A, which is 30% flat, and nothing more except for 24B provision. Slightly that would be a difference there.
No, see, that is only with regard to the deduction part of it, but various provisions right from 28 to 42 about the 48.
I still want to differ there slightly, sir, because if you still look at the actual wordings of 56, what you're talking about, it still says if it is not a business activity. If you just go back to, because if I am right, there are still a lot of judgments which have said that if you don't come under 28, then you'll come under 56 as far as renting of furniture and hiring of furnitures and is concerned. That's what I felt, that my section 56 does give me an option which says if I'm not coming under 28, then only I go to. Can you just help me out in reading out the section 56? If income is not chargeable under the head business and profession. And therefore 56 is not an isolated provision. 56 says if I am not coming under 28, then only I will come under 56.
Yeah, even in the,
so therefore it gives me a choice.
Yes.
So therefore I can still go under 28, but if I feel that's not my full-time business, then I can go under 56. So that's slightly, that benefit is not there between 22 and 28. It doesn't say if you are not coming, that provision is not there. So slightly different.
Even in respect of property developers, the objects clause includes hold, let out, and then take on lease, and all kinds of properties. Therefore, even letting out of the property also is deemed with the nature of the business of the company.
That is exactly what I'm discussing.
Yeah.
Just because your objects clause says that letting out properties is my business, simpliciter cannot become my business just because your objects clause says so. No. Yeah, MOA is not a basis for me to decide the charging section here. Yes? Yeah. Fine. So coming back to this now, that is you got serial number 26, which is your Mangala Homes case here. Very similar to what we have discussed here. Due to recession, the flats could not be sold, and therefore they let out the property on rent. So that means the job was to sell the properties, but due to recession, they could not sell the properties, and because they could not sell the properties, they said at least let me get some revenue out of it, and they gave it on rent. Can that be called as business? Answer is no, it can't be called as business. It still comes under house property itself. So in all these cases, if you see, although my objects clause tell me that I have a business to let out properties, no use. Although I'm keeping it as stock in trade, which is meant to be sold, no use. If I can't prove either there was an excess between my business income and the rental incomes, and it's simpliciter letting out of properties, no, then it will always be a house property income only. Let me go to case 3. That's about the leasehold properties. First we had the Balaji Enterprises case. This is for your reference. If you look at serial number 8, I've called it as business income. This was a Karnataka High Court judgment, wherein Balaji Enterprises case, if property is taken on lease, assessee is not the owner. 22 says, to come under house property, you should be the owner of the property. If I am not the owner of the property, I can't come under house property. And therefore, Karnataka High Court judgment on Balaji Enterprises was, since I am not the owner of the property, it's only a leasehold property, therefore I cannot come under house property, I will go under business because you are not satisfying one of the requirements of 22 being the owner. Karnataka High Court judgment. But after the Karnataka High Court judgment, we had the Podar Cements case. This is there in serial number 9 in your book, which said this is a Supreme Court judgment. Of course, the Balaji Enterprises case was a Karnataka High Court judgment, whereas Podar Cements was a Supreme Court judgment, which said owner includes person entitled to receive income in his own right. Now, as long as so what it's a leasehold property, if I have ownership, so they said ownership is not relation to what the sub-registrar thinks about you. Ownership is more to do whether you have a right to receive that rental incomes, and therefore he said, the Supreme Court said, that if you have a right to receive the rental income in your own right, then it should be a house property. You cannot say you're not coming under section 22 at all. So the word ownership is not limited to mere TOPA provisions, that is your Transfer of Property Act provisions. It just went a slightly bigger, and they said if you have a right to receive in your own right, then you should be called as house property. And therefore Balaji Enterprises case of Karnataka High Court stands distinguished. In fact, you should know here also, we had next the Bopalam case, which also talked about, which relied on the Podar Cements. It is there in serial number 11 in your book. And if you see, this court also held that Podar Cements overrides Balaji Enterprises case. So this case no more holds good today, and you have got two case laws. One is the Podar Cements case, and the other one is Bhupalam's case, wherein the Bhupalam's case said that going by the fact that Podar Cements will override Balaji's case, I can't rely on this case anymore. So Podar Cements says that if I have a right, then even if it's a leasehold property, I will come under house property itself. Now let's come to composite rent. Now let's talk about something on composite rent. Of course, slowly I'll go on to the last part, that is the malls and all, I'll come only at the end. That is the last part. Let me take this case, that is the Supreme Court judgment of Shambhu Investments Private Limited versus CIT, 2003 judgment. If you actually read this case, you will find that the Supreme Court actually did not discuss anything at all. Absolutely. You will find a very small discussion on this case of 2003. All discussions was done by the Calcutta High Court. And from the Calcutta High Court, when it went to the Supreme Court did not dwell on any matter. It straight away simply said that you should treat it as house property. So there was no, it is always considered as a bad judgment, but this is the judgment that is there. What are the facts? It is important for us to understand, because most of the other issues was all based on Shambhu Investments case, because it was favoring the revenue department. Let's see. The assessee had let out the furnished office to the occupants on a monthly rent. So it was a furnished accommodation, inclusive of all charges to the assessee. That means there was a composite rent. There was rent as well as amenities or facilities provided. The entire cost of the property let out to the occupants have been recovered by way of interest-free advance. This is one of the points which actually went against the assessee. They said whatever money you wanted has already come to you in the form of advances, and therefore it's very difficult to call it as a business proposition that there is exploitation of property by your side. So they said, since you have received everything in the form of advances and you're only letting it out, I understand it is composite. Now we all know two things. When we make agreements, you would have seen a lot of agreements wherein for letting out of furniture, one separate rent is charged, and for letting out of the building, another agreement is done. That is to straight away avoid confusion, saying that okay, this part is house property and the amenities part should be either other sources or business, depending upon how it is. In this case, bifurcation was not there. So if the bifurcation is not there, but I know what I am giving is furnished with furniture, that means amount I am collecting from the tenant includes two things. What does it include? Number one, it includes for the house, and one more, it includes for the furniture. Now combo, but I don't know the breakup. with classical music. When I don't know the breakup of whether it is towards house property how much and amenities charges how much, then how do I decide? Can I go by some Rule 7, Rule 8 provisions of, how they have agricultural income, wherein they say take 60-40, or like a service tax abatement rules, let us take 70-30. Now can I take something like that? Answer is no, I can't. And Shambhu Investments, unfortunately, it is given in serial number 10 of page number 325. You will find the Supreme Court judgment. And this is what they said. They said it will be taxable as income from house property. So if you don't give me a breakup as to how much is towards amenities and how much is towards the property, then I will treat the entire amount received to be towards property. In reality, it is defeating section 22. How it defeats section 22 says? 22 says it should be income from letting out of a building. Now what I am getting is actually not from letting out of a building. I know very well that I am getting money for amenities provided and facilities provided. Still, Supreme Court said, look at this. One of the principal factors that persuaded the court is that the entire cost of the said property was recovered from the occupants by way of interest-free advance. So they said, I don't find any commercial activity from your side. What I like is the Calcutta High Court judgment. Let me repeat again. It is the Calcutta High Court judgment which was taken up by the Supreme Court to give its judgment. So what is more important is the findings of the Calcutta High Court, because Supreme Court only gave one line answer. What did Calcutta High Court said? Calcutta High Court said, in case it is found that the main intention is to exploit the immovable property by way of complex commercial activities, it must be held as business income. So Calcutta High Court did mention in its judgment, if you can prove to me that the money what you are receiving both for amenities and space is from commercial utilization of the property, I don't mind calling it as business. But because you could not prove to me that you have used it for commercial exploitation, therefore I'll call it as house property. So the way I understand this judgment, I will not say that this judgment is against the interest of the assessee. I will still say, if you look at the actual wordings, Supreme Court never gave anything. It only went by whatever Calcutta High Court said. Right? And Calcutta High Court said, because you could not prove to me, that is based on the findings of the fact. And therefore it said, I'll treat it as house property. But it went on to give this safety provision here. It said, if you can prove that your intention was to exploit immovable property by way of complex commercial activities, it must be held as business income. Although in this case it was held as house property because you could not prove. So I'll still say, this is not a negative judgment. I can still say that you can use it positively if you can prove the other para what they have referred to. So it's still possible to call it as. Now this is what helps me in understanding the subsequent judgments. Now let's look at the subsequent judgments after this. Now I'll come to the last part, which is the important one, and that is case 5. That is about a commercial exploitation of property or letting out as an organized basis. Just to go back, this is what triggered case 5 for me. What has triggered case 5 is this. Now case 4 said, again I stress on this point, Supreme Court said it is house property, agreed. But Supreme Court gave the judgment based on findings of Calcutta High Court. And what did Calcutta High Court say? Calcutta High Court said, if you can prove this part, I can still call it as business. Because you didn't prove, therefore I am calling it as house property. Taking this as the cue, now comes case 5, wherein I can say, now does it mean, if I can prove this last part, what Calcutta High Court said, now can I take shelter, saying that it is not house property, it has to be business. So let me now take it from Shambhu Investment Supreme Court judgment as to whether I can treat it as business income. And that's case 5. So let's see this now. This is given to you starting from serial number 2 in page number 324 of what you have in the material, just for your cross reference. Sultan Brothers Private Limited, this is again 1964 judgment of Supreme Court. I am starting from there. That means way before. Unfortunately, Shambhu Investments case, what I discussed just now, did not refer to any of the predecessor judgments of the Supreme Court. And therefore they did not give anything. It only gave a simple one paragraph judgment, wherein they said, I go by the Calcutta High Court. That's it. So therefore all findings is only from the Calcutta High Court. So going by this, they said, this is interesting for me. Although I am discussing business, IFOS is equally important. It said held as IFOS. IFOS is your income from other sources and not house property income. On what basis? Let us look at this. Buildings and the fixture and furnitures were to be used for one purpose, namely for the purpose of running a hotel with them all together. Unlike the judgment what I told you previously, where in the Kayaram Hotels case, what I gave it to you, there you only let out the infrastructure. That's it. Here I am talking about you are actually running the hotel also. In this case, where the letting of assets is inseparable from hiring the space. I have already referred to this fact, saying that 56 very clearly says if you can come under 28, you can still come under 28, otherwise you will come under 56. So as I said, where the letting out of assets is inseparable from hiring the space, it cannot be a house property income. It is either business income or it has to be income from other sources. That itself is a good judgment for me. Why? Because you are still giving me an option saying that I need not always come under house property alone. And this judgment, way back in 1964, which did refer to section 10 of the 1922 Act, that is before the 1961 Act, we had the 1922 Act. So it referred to section 10 also, and it said that it can either come under business there or under other sources. So this is an important judgment for us. That is the Sultan Brothers judgment of 1964. It was followed up by one more Supreme Court judgment. I'll take that also. This is there in serial number 3, page number 324, which is CIT versus National Storage Private Limited. This is again a Supreme Court judgment. It was a little bit later, that is in 1967. What happened in 1967 was, this is what they said. Let's look at this. They said, it can be held as business income. Look at the details there. Income obtained is not so much because of bare letting of the tenement, but because of facilities and services rendered. So am I just giving the shell structure, or am I also giving something more than the structure? They said if you are giving something more than that, the operations involved in such letting of the property may be of the nature of business or trading operations. So in this case also, continuing the Sultan's case, so just going back, continuing this case of 1964, it was followed up by the Supreme Court again, right, later on, which said that it is still possible to call this. So that means Sultan's case also said it is not. I told you one aspect in between, saying that if you have any doubts, you can ask me the doubts. Yeah, I have double advantage. One advantage, as I told you already. I have got one more, which I can mention now, right? I wanted to mention at the beginning. I couldn't do that. Now I can mention. That is, Ashok is here. So, because Ashok Raghavan is here, you can ask me further doubts also. I will still clarify, but still you can still ask me further doubts. If you like the entire case laws what I have given you, all the case laws that I have given you with all the analysis and the citations, you can praise me for that. Thank you very much. But if you don't like the case laws, you can tell it to Ashok Raghavan, because he only helped me to take all these case laws. Okay, so he only gave me all those and helped me to actually accumulate and put it in one place. So coming back to this, so just like the Supreme Court judgment there, you have got the 1967 case also following up, wherein they said if you can prove the words in bold, facilities and services were also rendered, and if you can say that yes, it was done in an organized manner, then yes, I'll call it as business income and not house property income. So we had two judgments. Of course, both are old judgments, right? All the 1960s judgment only. Now let's take it further. Is that sufficient to have the old ones? No, because I had the Shambhu Investments case, which was much, much later. So I have that fear that they may not go by 1960s judgment, they may go by 2003 judgment. So let me see some more. We'll take Karnani Properties case. This is again a Supreme Court judgment. So I'm still talking about another Supreme Court judgment of 1971, which is there in serial number 4, wherein they gave out with some more details. They said, if there is composite rent, wherein the property with amenities, both are there, this is what they said. Can you find these aspects in this transaction? If the services rendered by SSC are the results of, number one, its activity is carried on continuously. Am I rendering services on a continuous basis, or just like that I gave something and it stopped there? If it is on a continuous basis, it becomes a strong hold for me to say that it has to be business income, number one. And second, in an organized manner. So am I doing this activity in a organized manner of giving it, then with a set purpose and with a view to earn profits. These are all aspects which we generally link with business. Because when we ask what do you mean by the word business, we always talk about business being with an objective to earn some profits, and it's on a continuous basis, organized manner. These words are used. And if you can link saying that your primary objective was service, incidentally there was a property, then it is possible to argue that it has to be a business income rather than a house property income. All three case laws are Supreme Court judgments only. I'll continue with some more, which had some interesting observations. Calcutta High Court. Now they said, is there commercial utilization of the property? Let's have a look at this. This was in 1978. It was held as a business income. They said letting out on lease the entire hotel along with goodwill, furniture, equipments, building, etc. And you're also involved in those continuous activities. Then they said I can still call it as a business income. So this case also supported what we have just now discussed, that is the Karnani Properties case. Now let's have a look at this now. That is the Kongrar Spinners case. That is the Madras judgment 1994. So I'm just going, if you see in that chronological order, I took the old 1960s case, then went on to the 70s, and I'm talking about the 90s case also. All holding that you can treat it as a business income. I've already given you enough cases which talked about where it can be disputed as house property. But in every case of house property, I've also earmarked and told you why it cannot be house property if you can prove these facts. What happened in this case? Of course, here also they refer to Shambhu Investments in the sense, not that the Shambhu Invest case was actually a later case, but they also gave a similar analogy. What did they say? If it is only letting out of a property simpliciter, that means I am not doing anything, but I am only giving a property, then it has to be still house property only. So they agreed. It will be house property with just letting out a property. But if it is exploiting the asset, it has to be assessed under the head income from business. So can you prove that you are using the property not just for letting out, but more or less to earn your other facility charges? Then I can say that it can be a business income. You had this Saptarishi Services case, which was a Gujarat judgment of 2004. If you look at this case, it was held as business income, wherein they said income from developing the property as a business center, providing various services like the receptionist. No, receptionist, I mean not the receptionist. Reception services, okay. We don't provide a receptionist. So providing various services like the receptionist, data processing, conference, etc. as well as no ownership rights or property let out for business. So if you are running these service centers, they said service centers can still come under business rather than coming under house property. This is given to you in serial number 12. Is there in page number 326. If you can just, if you are with me, if you are understanding all these cases. Now first I discussed about the fact whether it is incidental to business. I hope you know I am totally going in the tangent from what I have discussed then. Initially I said, is it incidental to business? Which we talked about RFA, rent-free accommodation, concessional rent, all those cases. There it was a straightforward situation. If it is incidental to your business, section 28 squarely comes. Because 22 will not apply, because 28 says anything incidental. That was more simpler. Then only we talked about what happens if I am holding it as stock in trade. I am holding some properties as stock in trade, and because I could not sell it, now I give it on rent. There I said it has to be house property, no doubt about it. Right? Then I talked about leasehold properties, giving you Podar Cements case. Now I said irrespective of dispute of ownership, whether I am the owner or I am having leasehold rights. Podar Cements and Bhupalam case said, I don't care about that. As long as you have the right to have the rent, I will still come under house property. So there is a clear distinction what the court is trying to say. Whereas now what I am discussing is pure business. Unlike what I told you beginning, just because my objects clause has as in my MOA, saying that my business is to let out property, it cannot be so. But if I am actually doing a business of exploiting the property, then yes, it can come under business. I hope you are getting the difference there between one facts of the case and the other facts of the case. Let me just go to the next one. This is there in serial number 19. This is a 2008 Bangalore Tribunal judgment. This is about Global Tech Parks, was the SAT. This is more to do with the software entities being let out, wherein developing technology park. Now, it was argued by the department, so what if you have developed a tech park, you have let out one property, how does it matter whether you have constructed it as a tech park or you constructed something, wherein I told you Kayaram's Hotel's case also, so what if you have just built it as a hotel, doesn't make a difference. But, what happened in this case was, letting out of the property was a composite one with host of services and amenities. The entire activity is carried on in an organized manner. This is where these words started to come. Now it is from 2008, wherein they said, can you prove these things? Wherein there are host of services provided. I hope you know in a tech park it's not just a question of building a tech park. There's much more what the developer does in giving you the services. So the entire activity is being carried in an organized manner. Obviously it's a continuous basis with an objective and to earn profits. And because it is there to earn profits of an investment made by the SSC as a commercial venture, this will now go against the Shambhu Investments case. Now in Shambhu Investments case, there was no situation of commercial exploitation of property. There was nothing called as letting out facilities on an organized manner, continuous basis. None of these facts existed there. But of course, even in Shambhu Investments case, Calcutta High Court, before referring it to Supreme Court, did mention that if you can prove that you are using all these things, Calcutta High Court itself admitted that I will still call it as a business income. Now I come to some more recent judgments. You got the Golf Link Software Park Private Limited versus AIT. This is the 2010 judgment. This is again decided by ITIT Bangalore B bench. You can find it in serial number 25 in page number 328. Now this also gave a lot of clarity here, wherein they said it is held as business income, no doubt. So that means now I'm all orienting towards business, saying that it can be business income. What have we developed? Developed an IT park with which house many software companies, other facilities and amenities such as electricity, water supply, central AC, generator backup, all plethora of services were provided. It relied on the National Storage Private Limited Supreme Court judgment. If you remember in the beginning I gave you Sultan Brothers judgment, Supreme Court, National Storage, again Supreme Court, Karnani Properties, again Supreme Court judgment. So they went by, that means, by this we already had Shambhu Investments case. So the court did not go by Shambhu Investments case because they said that is not a good case to refer in these facts. They have to go by the other cases of the Supreme Court, and going by relying on that, and they also relied on their own judgment of Global Tech Parks Private Limited, and therefore they said the entire activity was in a organized manner to earn profits out of investments made by SSC as a commercial venture, and they said therefore it has to be treated as business income. So you got the support calling it as a business income. I think this is more clearer now. This was 2010, but I have a lot of cases of 2013 also recently given in the current year itself. Let me tell you about those also. I'll take one 2009 case of Jesco Corporation. This is Mumbai Tribunal judgment, wherein it was held as a business income. I repeat again, my main focus of giving you all this is to help you get all these cases in one place, so that when you have to have an argument with any of the cases with your clients, you have got these references. So giving space with services and facilities which are varied and wide. It again they went by the same wordings. What is the wordings they said? Constitute an organized structure for making profits and will constitute a business. SSC had created a commercial infrastructure and the services rendered were complex business and business activities or commercial complex activities. SSC was a property manager. This is the wordings which is interesting. Now what are you doing with this asset? Are you being a property manager or you're just a passive owner of the property? So there's a difference. If you're just the owner of the property, given it on rent, and you're doing nothing over the property, then you become a passive owner, that's it. And if you're a passive owner, obviously it squarely falls under 22. That means it has to be house property income only. Whereas, if you say no, I'm like a property manager, wherein I'm using it for commercial activities and exploitation, then yes, I can call you as a business activity. So this wordings also became important to understand in this Jesco Corporation's case. Then you have the Kolkata judgment of a mall. So let me take this, because this led to a lot of other cases following this PFH mall case. Therefore, I'll take some more details of this so that you understand the entire facts of this case also. So let me tell you the entire facts of this case. So I will take a little bit more detail on this case. That is the PFH Mall and Retail Management Limited versus ITU 2008. This is the Kolkata judgment. But the facts are relevant because all other subsequent judgments were based on the facts what we understand here. So this slide may be a bit crowded slide. You please manage with me. I'll just tell you quickly some of the facts of this case. SSC had developed a shopping mall and a business center, providing a large number of services, facilities and amenities. You know how malls, we can always easily relate to a mall. So it was letting out of a mall. Fine. The mall's business centers were to remain open from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. The users could not use the space for staying in any part of the building after working hours. Now, if you know typically how a mall is, I'm sure such of those who have gone for a second show for a mall. When you go for a second show and when you come out, that looks like one haunted place. You will find nobody there. It's a totally haunted place type. Nobody is there. So, where can you say that you have actually let out the property to a tenant? He is also gone. There's actually no, but you've got all your facility support staff for always there taking care of the whole activity and holding the entire premises in one. The users had only permissive uses. That means they can only enter, utilize and go out, but not that they can actually use the property for their own exclusive benefits. Then what was the holdings? Let's understand the holdings here. Yeah? Held. Number one, mere fact that income is attached to immutable property cannot be sole criteria for assessment of such incomes as income from house property. A very, very important part for us. Now this gives you a chance to call it as business. So what is the criteria here? Wherein the Kolkata High Court said mere fact that income is attached to immutable property cannot be the criteria to assess it as house property income. Obviously, letting out of a mall and earning revenues is attached to a property. So does it squarely fall under 22? No, it says it need not fall under 22. It says it is necessary to dig further. So what do you mean necessary to dig further? Dig further to find out what is the primary object of assessee while exploiting property. So let's see what is the primary objective of assessee while exploiting the property. Let's see what it says. If it is found that main intention is number one, what can be the main intention? For simply letting out the property, then it will be income from house property. So if you can say, no sir, I'm only letting out the property, nothing else I'm doing. So what if I built a mall? So I might have built a mall, but because I'm just letting it out without doing any activities, then it has to be house property, no doubt. Or can you prove the second part? Exploitation of immutable property by way of commercial activities. Then they said it can be treated as a business income. And in this case, they could prove that there was exploitation of the immovable property. And therefore they said it has to be a business income. And this case gave rise to all the other cases later, wherein next few cases what I'm going to discuss never spoke about Shamu Investments case at all. They all went by the fact that it can be a business income. And it's all based on these facts. I'm not going to repeat these facts later because these facts get repeated in all the subsequent cases also. So I'll just conclude one last time. They said you have to dig further. Just because linked with property is not sufficient answer. You have to go further deep and see whether there's exploitation of the property and you're doing commercial activities. If the answer is yes, then you have to go by that factor. So let's see. Yes, sir. I will. I'll definitely, as I think now, as and when you go a little bit further, you'll understand. Right? So if you're still not clear, then I'll definitely answer it. I'm sure it will come now. Everywhere we are talking about what do you mean by exploiting the property for commercial purposes.
Are mainly, big IT parks or malls. What if I have a 5-story or 4-story commercial complex? I'm letting out. I'm the owner. I have a guy who is taking care of all the, collecting of rent. So I'm doing it in an organized manner. And I also have an elevator. For their for their use, all that. So will it be a house property income or a business income?
I'll definitely answer that. It will come now. Those answers will definitely flow. Right? I'll definitely take it up. Okay, this question is, first answer is outside syllabus. Second answer is, I'll still give an answer. You can still ask again just for the benefit of everybody else.
Supposing it is a tech park and I offer it as income from business, there are no objections about it, and a particular floor is not let out and it is completely vacant the whole of year. And how will I be able to claim the depreciation? It is not put to use.
Okay. So the question is, we have now come under the presumption that we are talking about a business asset only.
Yes.
We are also accepting the fact that it will be coming under business income 28 provisions. Now the question is, once I have come under 28, what about 32? That is to claim depreciation under section 32 is the question. Now I'll ask a reverse question. I am running a garment factory. In my garment factory, I have got 100 sewing machines. Good business I had, therefore I was claiming depreciation on 100 sewing machines. This year my business is not good, and because the client's business is not good, he uses 60 sewing machines, 40 sewing machines, that cover also is not removed. Even for Ayush Puja, they did not remove the cover. For Diwali also they did not remove the cover. They kept the cover like that only, and that 40 sewing machines were like without touching it for the entire year. Question: can I claim depreciation on 100 sewing machines or 60 sewing machines? Answer is, I can claim on all the 100 sewing machines, because you got enough of judgments to say depreciation can be claimed on active use as well as passive use. Now the question is, what is passive use? The moment it is capable of being used, it is deemed to have been put to use. Otherwise, I'll have to go by every machinery. I'll have to appoint one assistant. When I ask the machinery, no depreciation. When I on the machinery, again I'll claim depreciation. Therefore, that it is possible if you say one floor has been kept vacant, but was it capable of being?
No, particularly no, it makes more complex, especially when you build a tech park, you don't get occupancy in the year 1 or year 2, year 3. 75%, 80% of the building remains vacant, or 100% of the building remains vacant in year 1, year 2, then gradually occupancy goes up. How will you be able to justify claiming the depreciation on the entire building?
Okay, so now we are actually deviating from the topic of,
yeah, little,
but only little more to do with whether depreciation can be claimed or not. Yeah, somebody wanted to throw some light on this. Yeah? Yeah. I heard some voice.
Bus service, which are decisions about 15-20 years back, that has also been upheld by Supreme Court recently. I don't have the case law right now with me, which talks about an asset which was put to use for some previous years, suddenly 2 years not put to use because of the downturn in economic conditions. They have held that depreciation can be claimed. So in your case, even if one floor is not put to use at all, as long as it forms part of the same building, and even to sweep and swap it and keep it in the same condition, you have people entering and getting out, it is put to use, therefore depreciation can be claimed.
So therefore occupancy need not be the criteria. In your case, when you're talking about 70%, 80% occupancy of the tenants of the mall, so you say all the 100% of the building, I can still claim depreciation. All the 70% occupancy is there of the property. That's very similar to what
because
I said.
You're still putting people to go and do housekeeping for that vacant floor also. So it is put to use in that way. So the question doesn't arise.
And even otherwise also, all your amenities are towards the entire property. Yeah? Okay.
How are the slides moving without any laptop being operated?
How are the slides moving?
Remoter, is the slides moving you or you are moving the slides?
That is called as organized activity. Right, so in an organized manner, on a continuous basis, right, so with a clear-cut objective, it is being done. So, so used to taking so many sessions that I don't, I don't want to go back and keep on operating. There is something called as a remote, which we can use. Yeah. Okay. So let's have a look at this. We have got CIT versus Tirupati organizations. Of course, this was a 2013 judgment. That means I'm talking about the latest judgment, a 2013 case. What are the facts? The assessee company had rented out a property but had allowed its use thereof for the purpose of joint venture business. In addition, it had provided infrastructure facilities. So the property was for joint venture and lot of infrastructure facilities also were provided. What was it held? Since the company was in a joint venture with lessee, income is to be treated as business income number one. Though this is what I would like you to appreciate in 2013 judgments. Very interesting judgments. What happened was, now before I continue, what happened in all these 2013 judgments was, as a matter of abundant caution, it was advised that have two agreements, one for rent and one for all the facilities. As an abundant caution, so that at least if it is struck down, your amenities are safe. Only if the rental point will come under 22. So as an abundant caution, two agreements were done. One for rent, for the space, other one for facilities. Beautiful judgments. All these 2013 judgments have told, in spite of the fact that you've got two different agreements, one for space and one for amenities, still the intention is to treat it as one single property and one single commercial activity is what you're doing. And they said, in spite of the fact that the two different agreements, the entire agreement 1 and agreement 2 together will come under business and profession, in spite of the fact that you had two agreements. Those are classic judgments. What I'm going to discuss now is that only now. So they said, in this case, though there exists a separate agreement for renting purpose, in spite of that, they said, based on the investment decisions, the income held was taken into consideration, and they said it has to be treated as a business income. So here they said, can you say that all this infrastructure what you have is not being let out as a infrastructure? So when you say, what do you mean by commercial exploitation of the property when you asked? That is why the mall case became so important, PFH mall case. What are you doing in case of a mall? Is your only objective just to let out 10 by 10 carpet area? Or you're giving him much more than that? Oh, I think you're giving him much more than that. You're having 101 activities happening in that place, which means my objective was not just to let out one 10 by 10 or 100 by 100 and earn something out of it. I'm actually commercially utilizing. So you have to join all these words. I talked about one passive owner of property. What's a passive owner of property? In fact, I'll be summarizing all that again. So just for your information, because you asked, just trying to add on here. If you're just a passive owner, you gave the property and did nothing else about it. That means there's no commercial exploitation. But are you also doing something beyond that? I'll give you some more. I'll give you some more examples there. Again, 2013 judgment. This is Velankani Information Systems, Karnataka High Court. So that means good for us. And what was this judgment? Just quickly tell you the facts. Assessee was a real estate developer providing comprehensive facilities to IT industries. There were two separate agreements again for letting out buildings and for provision of amenities. Two separate agreements. One for buildings, one for amenities. And then letting out of specialized buildings and office premises in Software Tech Park to cater to the special requirements of IT industry. So that means they were not only letting out the building, again, Tech Park facilities were all provided. Very recent judgment. This was the facts. And what was the answer? They said agreements for letting out a building and provision services were entered into contemporaneously and object was to enjoy the entire property as a whole. So they said, so what, you have two agreements, but the fact is it is one single activity what you are doing. So I cannot bifurcate property, Tech Park separate and the facility separate. All of them go together, and therefore they said because they go together, it has to be held as a business income. What was held as business income? Was it first agreement, second agreement? They said both the agreements. Income could not be separated on basis of separate agreements. So what? I have two agreements. Still, income is still one only, in spite of having two agreements. And this is what is the better part of the judgments. When you're talking about you have two, and they said, is there commercial exploitation? And was there letting out as an organized activity? And if your answer is yes, they said it has to be treated as business income only. I think I've been pushing this point very hard, talking about the fact that ultimately what it is. Just to give you a quick summary, I'll quickly go through, starting with the Sultan Brothers case. We said if it is inseparable from letting out of furniture and building were inseparable, then you have to go by the fact what is the main objective. Was the main objective letting out of furniture, or was the main objective giving the property? If your main objective was utilization of furniture, then it has to be predominantly more of business or other sources. All three cases what I am giving you here are Supreme Court judgments, all the three of them. That is Sultan Brothers, CAT versus National Storage, and Karnani Properties. All three spoke about the same aspects, saying that if you can say that there is a complex activity, now what are you hiring out? Is it a complex one, or is it simply letting out the property? If you say no, it is complex. Now one question, can I say I have kept one elevator in the entire premises, therefore my entire letting out is complex? Now it's not easy for me to prove that it has become complex because there is one escalator or there is one elevator. Difficult to say that it has become a complex activity, because if you look at the overall reasoning of collecting the rent, it was not just for that elevator, it was more to do with the space. Supreme Court judgments. Come to this PFH Mall, what I told you, because the property is the criteria, cannot be treated as house property. Again PFH Mall said, can you say that the commercial complex activities are being carried on? Global Tech Park, wherein they said it was a composite one with host of services, and I am trying to give you the main nutshell of all the cases. If your activity falls under any of these nutshells, then yes, you have a strong case to call it as business. All these two cases which were the latest 2013 judgments. So what did we understand from the 2013 judgments? In spite of two agreements, it can be treated as one if you can prove it as an investment decision. And as usual, 2013 case said, can you say there is commercial exploitation of property and letting out as an organized activity? Now look at this. What do you mean by organized manner? Sir, you asked this question. Commercial exploitation. I'm trying to give you some of the factors here. Some of the factors are, can you say number one, facilities and services are rendered continuously? See, putting up one infrastructure is not sufficient. I put up one infrastructure and say infrastructure is there, now you use it. That is not merely called as a facility. Am I also involved in ensuring that I take care of the entire services? Number one. And that too should be on a continuous basis. With a set purpose to earn profits, that is a business venture. I should be a property manager rather than a passive owner, wherein I just have the property, I am expecting return on investment. No. There should be commercial, this is the word which we have been always using. And letting out should be as an organized activity. So if you can prove these things, then we say yes, there is some organized manner. Now can I simply say, going by his example, complex is there and I am having common staircase, common lighting, and therefore it is complex structure, wherein my main objective is not to let out the floors but also to give much more. Very difficult to prove. Very difficult to say that it is a pure commercial activity. Very difficult to say that. Having said all this, have I convinced you to a great extent that from house property you can shift to business? Yes or no? Oh yes. To a very large extent I have convinced you, saying that you can move from house property to business from all these cases. Of course, where it will be house property, I have emphasized, and where it can be business, I have told. After doing all this, I was also pretty convinced that it can now more or less settle that you can go into, yeah? Still.
Home automation, security systems, so everything when you provide, plus internet connectivity, Wi-Fi, everything on the house, centralized AC, security services. The distinction between residential property and commercial property is completely lost out. Then what happens? Actually speaking, it's because we have still been hedged very much in the past that we are tending to look at this distinction. Fact is that in all these cases there's an organized activity, and you have to recognize that and go ahead rather than get trapped with the old concept of rental income. That's where comes the catch. Because here in this particular case you would notice it's completely matching on every point. In fact, it might even go more. You may have a kitchen and pantry facility from which you can order food.
In fact, I wanted to say this, so he said it. After looking at the whole activities, looks like that slowly the disputes are coming down. Actually, no. It will only increase. Why it will only increase? Because of the new definition that has been provided by DTC. That is the Direct Tax Code. Trying to have a peek into what is it in mind in the views of the legislature for the future. In spite of all these developments, at least keeping this in mind, they could have ensured that the way they define the provisions for the future could have cut down these issues. But that has not happened. Actually, it's going to become even worse. How it's going to become even worse is because of the definition of house property as given by DTC, that is the Direct Tax Code. Now you've got section 314 clause 116. Basically in DTC you've got one single section which has defined all the words, so in one place. So you've got more than 300 definitions put in one place. So I'm talking about clause 116, which says house property means any building or land appurtenant thereto. This is copy paste from section 22. Along with facilities and services, whether inbuilt or provided separately. This becomes dangerous now. Why? Because till now I kept on telling, so what separate? Even if I have separate agreements, it's okay. All that I said, but unfortunately the wording seems to be typically how we have the budget which comes. Supreme Court judgments are there in 2013. I don't like any of the judgments, and therefore in the budget of 2014, I will reverse the whole activity and say this is my definition from now on. Like our deemed declared services types, what we have. So therefore now, Ashok, you'll have to throw light on what would happen because of this. Because of the definition which says, along with facilities and services, whether inbuilt or provided separately, or any building along with any machinery. So this is again with our discussion what we had in the beginning when we talked about that here. Building along with any machinery, plant, furniture or any other facilities or services, whether inbuilt or provided separately. Now if you look at this definition, I think the whole discussion here. I think there is no confusion, at least in one area. I will repeat his question.
One is about the layout of the industrial plots or otherwise a plain vacant land, deriving the rental income from that.
Right. Now, at least in that aspect, there is not much of controversy as far as my knowledge goes, because section 22 very clearly says you can come under house property if it consists of any building or land appurtenant thereto. Vacant land per se does not come under house property at all, unless that land is appurtenant to the building, which is in the form of compound area, garage, portico, backyard. Only then it can come. Else, it defeats section 22 because there is no building.
Yes. And Kirloskar Toyota case, actually, if I am correct, there was a landmark judgment about that industrial layout of industrial plots.
It was an industrial shed.
No, industrial plots. If I am
Which
correct.
shed? Like you have got a lot of these. We have one Reliance case also currently now.
Where industrial parks are developed and each plot is laid out to the thing. They construct their own factory buildings, they run the thing. I only get the rentals, lease rentals for giving the
Correct.
land.
What I get is only called as a ground rent.
Yeah, ground rent.
So ground rent is for the vacant piece of land that has been given. It will not come under host property.
Yeah, even those industrial parks come under 80IA.
That is fine. But as far as my revenues are concerned, will always be outside the scope of 22.
It is under IPS, Industrial Park Scheme 80IA. If I take like 100 acres and then develop into several industrial plots and let out the industrial parks or plots, I get the ground rent. It is exempt under 80IA. IPS, Industrial Park Scheme.
Correct, sir. That is what I'm saying. Correct, I agree with you.
Organized business act.
That is why it is coming under 80IA.
Because Business Act.
Exactly. So that is exactly what I'm saying. It cannot come under house property, which means it comes under business or other sources as the case may be, and therefore you'll have the advantage of claiming the Chapter 6A deduction. So the tax holiday provision can be claimed. Yes? Yeah. So this definition is a dangerous one. It is a new definition, and therefore if this goes across the way it is, then I think the entire discussion, you have a doubt?
To interpret that as long as my intention is to exploit it commercially, I can come under the business income. So similarly, even if there are facilities of like building machineries, fixtures, or whatever it is, as long as you prove that whatever you do is relating to the commercial exploitation, still we claim all the benefits with respect to the case laws which you stated right now.
Correct.
And apart from that, there is one other case, if I remember correctly, something called the Bossetto Brothers case. It's a Madras High Court decision. Probably it is a pre-independence judgment which is relevant even today. So when an assessee's income falls under two heads, the assessee can take a benefit whichever is the beneficial head. So taking those cases into consideration, I feel you have to fight it out ultimately.
Well said. Basically what we need to understand is, if you see here also, we are telling that is it building, and along with building are there facilities. I'll just give you a very crude example, Suppose I'm allowing somebody to put up a stall here right now. I'll say just put up one stall for sale of some books right now, and I'm going to charge him a fee for it. Now can I say I've let out a property? Can I say I've let out a property? I conduct this exhibition. You have seen these indoor Kantirava indoor stadium exhibitions, what I conduct. So when we conduct those exhibitions and say I'll create some stalls and I'll give the stalls, and I also give a lot of other facilities. I'll conduct some events there, and I will ensure that everything is taken care by me. The whole event is managed by me. The passes, the marketing, everything is taken care by me. Now can I say there is a house property income here? Have I let out a house property there? Is there space that I am giving out, or is it actually a commercial exploitation of the property? And still there is commercial. So therefore, here can I say I am letting out a building along with facilities, or is actually facility incidentally in a building? I think I am clear. So whether it is building along with facilities, or facilities incidentally there is also a building. Now if I can say it is more predominantly facilities, incidentally there is also a building, I can still come out of this definition and say that it can be treated as a business income. Correct.
Domestic robots. In these kind of cases which are there, I don't think you can escape out. You will finally have to end up saying labor is not available and it's an integral rent of household property with all these facilities. We have suffered because possibly wherever any IT or anything has been involved, we immediately called it complex. Rest of the world has treated it as simple and regular. Pass it. Regular fare for the course. What do you feel?
No, after the Information Technology Act, we'll create one more called as Indian Robotics Act. Right? And we'll say reference will be drawn from the Indian Robotics Act for all this. Yeah, go ahead. I'm done. So you can ask the questions. Absolutely no problem.
See, this is particularly connected with the SEZ developers. If I am developing an SEZ and I sell one particular plot of land, let's say 1 acre or 2 acres to one company, I am not actually allowed to sell because I am the developer. I can only let it out. So what they try to do is I enter into 99-year lease to a particular company and followed by a rent of 1 rupee per square meter for
1 minute. I will just take one applause from them. Ladies and gentlemen, with this I complete my presentation. Yeah, thank you. Right, so now you can continue. I'll get one applause at least. Okay, right?
Before all of you all go out, I think he deserves an applause. Because engrossing questions are probably going beyond everybody's head. So they thought, let them relax and come back. Anyway, sir.
Yes,
Yeah, in the case of SEZ developers, and he sells an industrial plot to a lessee, to a company, and he is not allowed to sell under the SEZ rules. He can only let it out. And the method of letting it out is he enters into 99-year lease for the place, and he collects a lease premium coupled with 1 rupee per square meter for as long as the lease is there. See, primarily I get back my in the form of 99-year lease. I get back my full
I think can you all close that door, please, because this is not on. One of you all just please close that door, people, because it's very disturbing to the speaker as well as the person asking the question. Get Anna, bye. A door closed, not here. Left in the hogi. Yeah, I'm sorry for that, but I think I had to intervene because when a person is speaking, if everybody walks out like that, it's not on, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, the SEZ developer leases out his land for 99 years on 99 years basis, collects substantially entire amount, and he enters into another agreement for yearly rent of 1 rupee per square meter as long as the lease is tenure. Now, this is typically a case of typical case of sale of the industrial plot to the company. But now, if you look at 43, see now this, even though it is 99 years lease deed, because it is registered as registerable with a sub-register, the stamp duty is payable on the average annual rental value, not on the guidance value of the property, what is stipulated under the for the purpose of payment of the stamp duty, and you cannot come back to 50C for assessing the income from capital gains and that. The stamp duty is paid only on the average annual value, even though the market value can be 10 times, 20 times the thing. Now, question number 1 is, how will you assess this as income from business? Is it in the year of first lease premium collected for 99 years lease, or should it be spread out for 99 years? Because I receive in year 1 itself, and it deducts a tax also at source, and if I have to claim that TDS on that amount, I have to offer under 199. Looking at 199, I have to offer as income also. And I can come out of 40. I think
Vijay is still understanding your question because it's taken 5 minutes. Fair enough. Yeah. We have to, there are 2 things. First of all, I think you need to understand one issue. The stamp duty which you mentioned, if there's a lease in excess of 30 years, stamp duty has to be paid as per the rate of conveyance under Rule 20 of the Stamp Act. It becomes a conveyance in Karnataka. But question of just paying on the lease rent doesn't arise anymore.
No, it happened actually, we have paid it.
You're lucky, that's all. All I can tell you is, if it is more than 30 years, you have to pay as the rate of conveyance under Rule 20. The law is very clear. So the 99-year-old leases which are there in Bombay cannot be done in Karnataka without the payment of stamp duty. Point number 1. Point number 2, which you're talking about paying 1 rupee now, 99 years later, all that, right? Is it between what, 2 sister concerns, or is it out?
No, independent contracts, independent parties.
What is your question again?
See, because he is a SEZ developer, I will have to offer it income from income from business only. If I collect substantially the entire amount for 99 years in year 1, how will I be able to appropriate and then keep it on record for 99 years as advance rentals? Or should I offer it in the year 1 itself? See, 99-year lease of premium I collect in year 1 itself.
I can tell you so much without, drawing a parallel. In the case of a timeshare, but in the case of a timeshare, they've held that we can actually spread it over the period of the timeshare and get the income each year depending on the total amount paid upfront and divided by the number of years you're enjoying the timeshare. I would look at this as a similar concept. The entire amount taken by you upfront should be spread over a period of lease, and you can take the income in every single year. But the issue would come, they will question your fair rental value itself, the fair value itself of the amount you're offering as income. Now, if you're having it between 2 sister concerns, then the domestic transfer pricing will also enter into the ambit from this year onwards. But in my opinion, if you go through the cases of Sterling developers of the Mumbai tribunal, you can definitely, the Chennai tribunal, you can defer it over the period of the period in which you enjoy the property as a lessee bar owner, because when you are in possession of the property or a deemed owner, because it's in excess of 12 years under the Income Tax Act section 27, and also you're paying full stamp duty because it's in excess of 30 years in Karnataka.
Both in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, stamp duty value was not, guarantee value was not considered for payment of stamp duty because it was registered as a lease deed and he has taken only average annual value and stamp duty was paid.
But now I'm telling you, in Karnataka, this is going to be the problem. 30 years and above, pay the market value and go on lease, no doubt. I think I was supposed to speak tomorrow. You want to do it today? We'll finish with Vijay's session.
Rental income only.
Okay, on rental income. Carry on, sir. Carry on.
Suppose the landowner gets 50 flats. Developer hands over 50 units. You'll not be able to sell at one point. It will take about 7 months, 8 months for a period of time. During that intervening period, it will be treated as deeming income, I want to. No, still a question is about the unsold.
Lying vacant. More than one house.
I understand that. Correct. Correct. This is your stock in trade which is not yet sold.
No. He's saying it's an investment asset. Vacant. Second, third flat vacant. Vijay, what he's saying, for the landowner it's a capital asset. I've got 7 flats, 6 I've left it vacant because of various situations, and 1 I'm getting rental. What happens to the other 6? Should I offer rent on it or not? As simple as that.
Yeah, you have an option here wherein it says that under house property, if at all you are hit by house property provision saying that notional income, there's a provision which says if there is 12 months vacancy, you can claim section 23 subsection 1 clause C benefit. 23(1)(c). Section 23 subsection 1 clause C. You can refer to that which says, because of the fact it is vacant for entire 12 months, your notional income gets reduced by that entire amount and therefore it becomes 0. You get the advantage. 23(1)(c) you can apply.
Earlier it was vacancy allowance. Now it's reduced from the annual value itself.
You get 23(1)(c). No problem.
Earlier those days we had something called a vacancy allowance. Now they reduce it from the annual value itself. So like he said, if you let it out for part of the year, you're in trouble. But if it's empty for the whole year, then you can completely reduce it from the annual value itself. Not? That's what I'm saying.
No. If it's let out for part of the year, you're correct.
Okay. No, are you trying to say if I leave it completely vacant, then I have to offer rent on the fair rental value for the balance of the apartment?
No, that is you are talking about because of 23(4) being your deemed let out properties, is it?
No.
Is that what you are trying to refer to? That will be hit by deemed let out provision 23(4).
See, under 1023C.
Whether it's a 23(4) transaction or a 23(1) transaction, is still a disputed one. You have got enough judgments which say that all 12 months can be deemed to be 23(1)(c) benefit. You can still claim. There are judgments which say 23(1)(c) is possible.
I'll just read the section itself. For the purpose of section 22, the annual value of any property shall be deemed to be. We come straight away to clause C, where the property or any part of the property is let and was vacant during the whole or part of the previous year.
Yeah, whole, vacant for the whole.
Or part of the previous
or
year.
Part. So,
and
owing to vacant
such
for the whole.
vacancy, the actual rent received or receivable by the owner in respect of thereof is less than the sum referred to in clause A. What is clause A? That is the sum which the property might reasonably be expected to let from year to year. If it is less than clause A, the amount so received or receivable.
Which is 0.
The prefix is let.
That is what is the interpretation if you read 23(1)(c). Absolutely.
Sir, there is a prefix called let and was vacant during the year. There should be an act of letting.
Let and was vacant, yes.
Yeah, it is
No,
never
that's what I'm saying. So
it was never let out.
So your interpretation is, if it is a part of the year only, this clause itself applies.
At least at any one point of time, it should have been let out.
You are saying
let
let and... Let's for one day, they are out for 364 days,
Then
you are
it is
eligible,
okay.
otherwise not eligible.
You can't get that benefit.
This is the doctrine of mischievous interpretation. Okay. But we are, I think we are, according to me, we have to go by the doctrine of beneficial construction, not of the mischievous
So the
interpretation.
first rule is ALU.
Fair enough. Let us go by the doctrine of beneficial construction. If the benefit is there for somebody who is not let it out at all, you cannot deny it to somebody who let it out for one day. Therefore, according to me, you have to give it to the person even if it is vacant throughout the year.
What is vacancy? There is a let out and then a vacancy.
The intention is more important. Okay, exactly.
I didn't get my rent. The concerned person did not pay me rent.
No, you talk about vacant. No, that is unrealized. You talk about vacant.
Vacancy.
See, according to me, if you look,
At that point of time, it meant that it should have been let out.
Bhaskar, on the literal interpretation, what you are saying, right? But on the beneficial construction, looking at the objective, I am sure you cannot discriminate two people. According to me, we can take the benefit of 22(1)(c).
Look, the rules of interpretation comes when there is a ambiguity. There is no ambiguity here.
Why there is no ambiguity? Because you go again by objects. Go into the objects and reasons, go into the reason for the amendment, and then you apply the provision.
Only if there is an ambiguity. There is no ambiguity and it is very certain. Whether it is right or wrong, you need to accept. When it is
No.
unambiguous.
It is not as simple as that. I'll tell you tomorrow when you come to inflation index also, the letter is the spirit of section 48 is very clear explanation. But you read more into it and you find that is not the intention of what they have said there.
That is only a case law, not the act.
No, act itself is again negated it in a different way.
It is only case laws which allow you to take it.
Ultimately, how do you develop? You develop by case laws at the end of the day. This act is what? Ultimately, you develop by case laws.
Are there any case laws on this?
On which?
This point.
I think you, Vivek, and rest of them should develop it now. As far as I am concerned, beneficial construction, you have to give the...
We want to try the 4 C's first. Confuse, corrupt.
No, last one is corrupt.
Not to litigate.
Last one is corrupt. You are going wrong.
I have a question. There's a commercial property which owner wants to rent it out. Because it's passive income, it will fall under, house property. But at the same time, he's supposed to charge service tax and, collect that. And, so the question I have is, how fair it is, for something to be considered as house property on the income tax side where it's not treated as business and profession, and then the service tax side you're calling it as a deemed service. Can the two be clubbed, and argued that, look, if it's house property here, there can be no service on those things?
Sir, I think from last 4 days, now it's 5 days, we have only been discussing that. If an immovable property can be taken as a movable property for the purpose of VAT and service tax, immovable property for stamp duty and registration fee, and retention of an asset for the purpose of municipal tax, ultimately if you sell, if it's called capital gain, where is the synchrony of laws? There's no synchrony of laws at all. Over and above that, our accounting standards and the accounting and the disclosure in accounts itself is again completely different. So therefore, you cannot look at synchrony of law at the moment. You have to ensure that as per each act, you go by that definition and confer with that definition as far as compliance with that particular act is concerned. Just because you're having it, of course, it gives you indicative of evidentiary value to fight a case. Suppose you say tomorrow, for example, software. They were saying they are collecting VAT on software when we sell. But still the Karnataka High Court said as far as withholding tax is concerned, it is royalty. And therefore you should have deducted tax at source. Although the man said I'm selling it and actually collecting VAT on it. Therefore, for each enactment you have its own set of rules. That harmony, I do not know whether it's going to come or whether it will ever come. That's the day we all wait for.
Yeah, the other question.
Then our practice will be less the time. Yeah.
The second question I had was on rental of parking space. Would that be considered as income from house property as well?
No, it will not be house property because it's not considered as a building. It will be part of ground rent.
So if somebody has got an apartment and he's bought an extra parking lot, and if he rents it out, then that would not be...
It will be under section 56 according to me income as a ground rent.
Correct. It will come under 56.
Building and lands appertinent there too.
No, he's not letting out the building. He's letting out only the parking area.
Space to park the car.
Only the one parking lot only is alone, separately let out. It's not appurtenant there too. It's land alone.
One more question. A person takes a property on rent.
That is full building let out. Then you are letting out the entire building.
Covered parking.
Which may be used for parking. That is covered parking.
The car park is built and let out, it is house property. Car park, open car park is let out, it is underground as ground rent.
But covered park, car park.
No. Car park is built like -1, -2, -0 like that, and if it is let out, it is house property.
No, are you trying to say the covered park, car park, you own the undivided share of the car park also?
Yeah.
If that is the case, I'll agree with
House
you.
property.
But if you don't own that, it's only a license, then you have a problem. It again comes back to other sources.
And house property versus business income, department is making productive assessments because there is an SLP pending in the Supreme Court. Which is that SLP and then what is the position about it? Recently also the department is making protective assessments even for assessment year 11, 12. They are not willing to accept business income. They are making house property income. Protective assessment even in Bangalore.
I'm not aware of any
Yes,
case.
even last 2-3 weeks back, it has come.
See, all I can tell you is, when you get any notice quoting Shambhu Investments, I have one particular standard reply which I have framed. See, if you look at Shambhu Investments 265 ITR, it came out of the Calcutta High Court judgment. The Calcutta High Court went on, it was a lease property, etc., etc. Now, in the Calcutta High Court, like Vijay has correctly pointed out, they clearly mentioned that if it is an organized activity, it should be taken as income from business. Unfortunately, when this went up to the Supreme Court, that aspect of the judgment was not dealt upon at all. It only talked about Podar Cements and said, deemed owner of property includes the lessee, therefore it's income from house property. They completely left that particular portion which talks about the income of that Shambhu investment being an organized activity. So you need to reply to them, because most of these notices will come with Shambhu investments. They do not have any other case at the moment. So you have to tell them to go to the paragraph of the Calcutta High Court judgment, quote and tell that this has not been actually overturned by the Supreme Court. It has not been met. Therefore, in my opinion, that is final. And therefore, it's only business income and not house property income. Please look at the Calcutta High Court judgment. You will get 2 paragraphs there.
So a person takes a premises on a rent, a flat on a rent, and he furnishes it and then lets it out as a furnished apartment. So let's assume a 25,000 rupees rent, then he furnishes it and rents it out to 35,000 rupees. In this, is it organized activity considered as business income or it's house property?
Bhaskar, again, if you're talking about one apartment,
one single apartment.
One apartment, and if you look at the immovable property definition, which I will deal tomorrow, includes furniture, fittings, etc., etc., then it will only be taken as house property. Because there's no organized activity like giving some special services or special, other different types of services, except simplicity letting out that particular thing.
So the profit earned out of this activity itself is very little, say 5% or 10%. In that scenario, how justify that it should be an income from house property?
No, in your case, you have taken it on rent and you're giving it. So it's more an activity of subletting. So as a subletting activity, you're anyway outside 22. You'll be coming under 56.
56 or
it is 5 years and above, the period of renting is...
That is if you're coming under section 27 as a deemed owner under the leasehold agreement. Then you still come under house property only then. So you need to see whether you're coming under a deemed ownership at 27.
Situation, even if I have one apartment, then you would have to treat it as business.
Because homestay is a different concept.
Right, but basically I can take something on rent, build it up, and offer it on rent.
See, I'll give you the difference, Ramesh. Homestay is more of a license concept, not even a rent, according to me. You allow a person to enter, occupy it for 2-3 days and go. You give him a host of services. Therefore, it's purely business income. I'm not worried in that case at all. The difference between a license and a lease, which is actually over a defined period of time. Yeah. Now, of course, Vijay will also be here tomorrow at 7 o'clock for the question and answer session. I'd like to, of course, I came in late for the first time today for 1 hour because I had some professional engagement. I had only done the job of sending a lot of case laws to Vijay. The moment I called him, he accepted. He said it's a good opportunity. He said, sir, but one issue, you have to send me the case laws also. I said, yeah, kya hai yaar? He said, no, sir, you send it. So I sent him a basket of case laws. Job became easier for me because he started expanded everything and given it back to me in the form of a book. I didn't have to waste my further time reading each and every case law. To that extent, I really thank him for that effort. Second thing is about him. I know him for a long, long time now. He's a star among the students. The students really revere him. I do not know about you all, I'm talking about the students. So, in my office especially, there are so many students who come and told me, and it's a fact. Sir, ಏನೇನೋ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ ನನ್ನ ವಿಜಯ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ತರ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು sir. Then I feel like an idiot. Although I know I may be one, that's a different issue. So, that is the extent of knowledge he has cultivated over the years, and teaching students is the toughest thing. Because they'll come up with exam-oriented questions. And exam-oriented questions, as you know, are the most difficult ones. So he has mastered the art of teaching students. So I think taking a class for all of us would have been child's play, in my opinion. And as I gave in my opening remarks on day one, this issue of income from business income from house property was specifically selected by me only for one reason. You have seen, right from Sultan Brothers up to the last one, Tirupati organizers, you have got diverse opinions by various judicial forums. Most of them, luckily, are veering towards the concept of business income, and rightly so. Whereas still, the Shambhu Investments ghost is not being buried by us successfully with the Income Tax Department. As I said on the first day, if I have a partnership firm, or I have a company, where my object is letting out of properties, nothing bars me under the company law, nothing bars me under any other enactment. Why should the Income Tax Act only stop from allowing me to take it as income from business? Because that is my core activity. Therefore, with all these latest decisions which he has culled out and so beautifully explained, I am sure all of us will be armed to face the notices of the Income Tax Department. And that is the reason we bring out this huge material way in advance, so that it is enriching ourselves and also helping us on a day-to-day profession as to how to combat the department, which is the most of the time we spend on the office table. So Vijay, I thank you profusely on behalf of the Bangalore branch for summarizing the whole thing. And I think we'll be breaking for tea, and some of them already broken for tea, the rest of them can go now. So I'll now leave it to the organizers.
Yeah. Friends, I'm sure all of you have enjoyed today's session on the structured renting of the business-related taxation. The job was well done. Please give him a big round of applause once again. Sir, on behalf of the Bengaluru branch of ICAI, we thank you very much for accepting our invitation and presenting this session today. Thank you very much, sir. Now I request the program coordinator Ashok Raghavan to present a memento as a token of gratitude.
This is for coming late, I think.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Padam Kincha with us in a few minutes on AS7 with the AS9, the taxation perspective.
Before concluding today's session, I would like to mention that we are breaking for tea and going to assemble back again within 10 minutes time. And please don't forget to collect your diary for 2014. Thank you.